All right, all right, all right. Here we are, part two of my 30th anniversary detecting video. Crazy stuff. First part was just about my 30-year journey. But there was a story before that. And the story was, how did I get started in this hobby? And it is really funny how, like I had said in the other video, I knew I wanted to do something like somehow detect, find treasure. You know, I just had that adventure in me growing up. And so when I moved from Quebec to Ontario, I said, now's the time. You know, it's a fresh start. I want to pull the trigger. I want to get a metal detector. I want to find stuff. So I started looking around, going to pawn shops and stuff like that, and it was I couldn't find anything. Every time I would go to like a pawn shop or something, they'd say, "Oh yeah, we had one about 4 years ago and we sold it." Like, oh, that's it. But I remember going through the paper one day and or somebody pointed it out to me in the paper and said, "Hey, you were talking about metal detector. There, look at that." And it was an ad, detector sales. And the name, call Fred at this number. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna call Fred, see what's going on. So I called the number, and this guy answers on the other end. I go, "Hey, is this Fred?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, my name's Dan." I said, I'm looking at your ad in the paper about metal detectors." And the guy said, "Yep." Like, he was really short too, and I was like, oh, you know, at least if you're in sales and stuff, at least be a little more friendly, you know. The guy said, "Yep." He goes, "Can you come over to my house on Saturday?" I said, "Okay." He gave me the address. He said 3 o'clock. So I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a quick sale. I don't want to talk to this dude, I'll tell you that, the way he was talking on the phone. So I show up at the house. Now here's the part. This is scary. I show up at the house. Nobody knows I'm there. I don't know anybody in it. I moved in February of '94. Now it's March. It's like the next month, within a month. And so I go to this guy's house. I don't know anybody. If I get killed, I'm done. Nobody'd ever know where I was. So I knock on this guy's door, and this guy answers the door. It's got like brownish dark hair, curly hair, got glasses on, mustache. And immediately the first thing I noticed when he answered the door was like he had rings on every finger. And he had like gold chains. And I remember the second he opened the door, the very first thing I thought of was Mel Fisher. Like, you know, Mel Fisher for like the Etosha and, you know, all the shipwrecks in Florida. And there's famous photos of Mel Fisher with all kinds of gold chains and stuff, and, you know, that he had found treasure hunting. And I looked at this cat and I'm like, first thing I thought was Mel Fisher. And he goes, "Are you Dan?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Come on in." And I'm like, I'm gonna get killed now. I mean, I'm going in a stranger's house, stranger danger, but you know what? Dumb Dan, I don't know the difference. So I go in, he goes, "Come downstairs in the basement." And I'm like, oh, this is really not good. So he walks down first, and I walk down behind him. And he turns a light on at the bottom of the stairs, and we're standing down there in the dark kind of, and I'm like, ugh. And he turns a light on. And when he turned the light on, it was like turning on the light for the rest of my life. It's exactly how I'm going to describe that. It was turning on the light switch for the rest of my life. When he turned on that light, his entire basement was metal detectors across the entire wall, right across the wall. And I'm like, oh, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is it. I'm looking at all these detectors. And then he goes, "Feast your eyes on this." And I turn around, he's got this, it's like in a store where they sell jewelry and all those cabinets, big glass cabinets, and he's got a big L-shaped cabinet, and he's standing behind it, and I look in the cabinets, and there's nothing but old historical relics and old coins and jewelry and you name it. I'm like, this is it. I said, this is Indiana Jones. I'm in his basement. I'm in Indiana Jones's basement. And he proceeded to start talking to me. He said, the first thing he said was, "Have you ever detected before?" I said, "No." He said, okay. He goes, there's more to detecting than just the detector. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, there's code of ethics. There's, you represent the hobby. And he starts rattling things off to me. And I'm like, I don't care about that. Just get me to the gold rings and all the 1800s coins and stuff like that. But he said, no. He said, great responsibility comes with a metal detector. He said, you need to understand that. And so he started talking to me about the code of ethics. And I quickly realized there is more to just turning the detector on and walking around. There's a lot more. And he told me all about the code of ethics and how, you got to be a good ambassador, good to the hobby and like when a good representative of the hobby. When people talk to you, you want to represent the hobby, positively. And this guy went on, and I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. I get what you're saying for sure. And then he started to tell me a few stories, and some of the stories he started telling me were like, I was just like staring at my jaw. He told me a story when he went down to South Carolina to one of his friends obtained a treasure map and this and that. And he started telling me this story, and they went down there and they got permission from the landowner to be on the property. Then the landowner started calling their friends over, and they started to get a little hostile, and they pulled guns on Fred and his buddy, and they had to walk away with, they were feared for their lives. And I was like it was like another Indiana Jones movie with his dad. I'm like, this dude really is Indiana Jones. And he told me other stories, and then he leans in and he goes, there's buried treasure in this town, blah blah blah, and it's like a few towns north of us. And I'm like, now he's really getting my attention. Now I was just like, I was hanging on his every word. And then he starts opening up can after can of coins and rings and stuff he's found, and I'm like, I was down in his basement it was 3:00 when I went. It was in March, so it was 3:00 in the afternoon when I went down his basement. I didn't come out of his basement until 6:30 at night. Like, we literally talked for 3.5 hours. This guy didn't know me from a hole in the wall. I'd never met this man in my life. I wound up buying a detector off of him that day, and he spoke to me for 3.5 hours, and he showed me the detector, how to use it, all kinds of stuff. And I walked out of there that day, and I never ever forgot that day, because that was the day that changed my life. In the detecting community, so the best way to explain it is, I modeled myself after this guy. I said, yeah, you know what? Everything he told me had value. Code of ethics, being a good ambassador to the hobby, all that comes with it, man. It's not just the metal detector. The metal detector is the last thing. It's all this stuff that makes the hobby what it is. And I carried that with me from that day forward. And so let's fast forward up to present day. I thought about him over the years. I always said over the years, I'd like to go stop off at his house and just say, hey, thanks, man. Thanks for taking the time with me, to do that, to get me into the hobby. I was a clean slate, and this guy or I was an empty glass, let's say that. And this guy filled my cup with all things good about the hobby of detecting. And I took that with me. And for 30 years, I've been doing that to other people. I've been paying it forward. I talk about to the hobby with people. I'm no longer embarrassed, by the way, to carry a detector around. That went away within a year, so 29 years ago. I'm proud of what I do, and like I said, I owe it all to him. And his name was Fred. I'm not going to give his last name for privacy purposes. And Fred, like I said, I thought about him for years and years, and I know that when I spoke to him, he had to be about 50. He was maybe my age, maybe just a little younger. And I said to myself, as I was approaching my 30th anniversary, I thought more about Fred. And I said, Fred's the guy. Fred's the man. Fred is the reason why I am who I am today. And I have to give him thanks. So I started this search looking for Fred. And I was going to do this dramatization where you see me driving in the car, knocking on people's doors. You know me, Pop Candy. I love doing all that stupid stuff. But this time, no. Out of respect for Fred, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I just want to talk about it, man. And so I started looking for Fred. I started online. Couldn't find him anywhere. I couldn't find him anywhere. He was no longer at the address that I went to 30 years ago. I didn't remember the address, but I remembered the street. When I went to the street, I had asked, and they said, one of the neighbors said, no, he moved a few years ago. I think it was like 10 years ago or something. I said, oh. Looking for him online, couldn't find him. Then I just decided, I'm gonna. It's funny because I kind of told this story in 2018 at a we call it a show and tell every April. Radio World, the big store in Toronto that also runs the Toronto Metal Detecting Club. They have a big show and tell, and we go there and you talk about your finds from the previous year, and you get up and talk. And I decided to take a few minutes and talk about Fred. And I remember when I was up there talking, and I said Fred's last name. And somebody who was standing over to the side had said, yeah, he did the same thing for me. And I was like, okay. But I had to finish. I was in front of like 75 people talking. I couldn't. Oh, really? So I had to. But I remember who said it. And remember, in part one, I mentioned the name Clive Clinic. He was one of the guys. He was like the second person I ever met detecting when I went to that event. And Clive was really nice, man. Clive. I spent my time with Clive on the way back, talking to him on the ferry ride from the island, and boy, what a character he was. But anyways, so Fred was the one. So I went to Fred after, and I said, Clive. I said, Clive, I mentioned Fred's name. And he said, yeah. He said, he did the same thing for me when he mentored me many years ago when I got into the hobby. And I'm like, oh my gosh, man. Like, this guy's like Santa Claus, like this guy is, what a saint. The best word they use is a saint. So I knew I owed it to Fred when I made this video to pay homage to him. So I messaged Clive the other day, and I said, Clive, I've been looking for Fred. I can't find him anywhere. I said, please don't tell me he passed away. And he said, he has not passed away. And I said, oh, thank goodness. I said, how do I get a hold of Fred? And he said, Fred doesn't want to be gotten a hold of. Fred's kind of in, not seclusion, but Fred doesn't want to be bugged by the outside world anymore. So I said, Clive, you tell Fred I'm not taking that as an answer. And I said, here's what I'm looking for. And I told him 30 years, what he did for me, how it got me in the hobby. So Clive's like, oh, okay, whatever, man, hold on. So he said, I'll email him and ask him. So he emails Fred. And then he emails me back and he said, you know what? Fred doesn't remember you. He said, but he will definitely take your email. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness, man. So I emailed him the other day, and like a week went by, and I'm like, oh, he's not going to respond to me. But I gave him the whole story, the whole backstory on that day when I went to his house to buy a detector, and how it changed my life that one afternoon. How paying it forward and spending time with somebody who you don't even know, 3.5 hours he spent with me to get me into the hobby, get me on the right track. And look at me 30 years later. I owed him that thanks, and that's what I put in the email to him. He responded back to me, and he said, things are really slow for me now. He said, I'm going to be 80 in a few months. He said, I barely detect anymore. He said, I don't really have the strength. I'm not, He said, my wife, who was my detecting partner for 40 years, passed away 10 years ago. He said, and it really took the wind out of my sails. And so, he said, but he said, I am so happy to see what I did for one person and got them into the hobby and got them, he said, from what I read in your email, you turned out all right, and I said, I did because of you, I said, because of you. I said, you need to know that, man. And I like to challenge everybody. This is how I want to kind of end this too. I want to challenge everybody to be just like Fred. All right? Find somebody who's in need of mentoring in the detecting community. Take them under your wing. Get them started. Get them on the right path. Teach them the right code of ethics and everything. Be like Fred. Do what Fred did for me to somebody else. And get the hobby in the right direction. I'm not saying it's in the wrong direction, but you know what? In my 30 years, well, I can't even say that. Well, let's just say the last 8-9 years when I've been on social media, I've seen the detecting community go, I'm not saying go down the crapper, but it just gets worse and worse with bullies online and faking fines and stuff like that. And it's so discouraging, man, but that's why I want to issue this challenge to everybody. Just be like Fred, how Fred was with me. Take the time, help somebody out. And and Fred said to me in the email, I'm so, it warms my heart to know that I was able to help you, and get you, your a career, not a career, but a hobby for life, and so I said to him, I in the email, I said, hey, do you still detect, and he said, I only detect in water now. He said, I'm not built for land anymore. I'd like to go in waist-high water where I can just kind of saunter around and, so I said to him, I said, listen, I said, next year in the summer, I'm going to send you another email. I'm going to harass you. It would be an honor for me, an absolute honor to be able to go water detecting with you. I don't care if I don't find a thing. Just to be in his presence and to detect with him once would mean the world to me. So I left that with him. I said, that would be my wish. My one wish would be to do that with you. So let's see where it goes. Anyways, folks, that's it for me. All right. 30 years, how I got started. 2 parts. Everyone, like I said, take the challenge. Be like Fred. Please do yourself a favor. Pay it forward to somebody else. Put them on the right path. It's the best way to go. All right, folks? That's it, man. Maybe I'll see you in another 30 years when I'm like 90. Be safe. Be safe.